Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased for the opportunity to speak to a bill that Conservatives believe is critical to the safety and security of Canadians. At face value, C-34 amends the Investment Canada Act with the intent to bolster Canada's foreign investment review process and increase penalties for certain instances of malpractice or contravention of the Act. Canadians could consider this bill an attempt by the Liberals to take threats posed by some cases of foreign investment seriously. However, we live in an increasingly volatile world, and as we have seen over these past few months, Canada is not immune to infiltration and manipulation from abroad. In the past, Liberals have failed to thoroughly review transactions involving Chinese state-owned enterprises. This pattern is repeating itself through C-34. Namely, Clause 15 removes the obligation for any foreign investment to be subject to a mandatory consultation with Cabinet. On this side of the floor, we believe that Canada's economic and security interests are paramount, and that this bill doesn't go far enough to protect them. That's why we put forward 14 very reasonable amendments at committee that would have intensified the review process of business acquisitions from foreign state-owned entities. Unfortunately, the Liberals and the NDP rejected all but 4 of them. They are critical to improving the bill nonetheless, and so I'm going to touch on each of them here. First, the government was prepared to pass a bill that would have given carte blanche access to investment from state-owned enterprises, no matter their relationship with Canada. There were no provisions that would require any investment by a state-owned enterprise to be subject to an automatic national security review when the government introduced this bill. Our amendment reduced the threshold to trigger a review from $512 million to $0, meaning all state-owned enterprise investment in Canada must undergo a national security review. Secondly, Conservatives introduced an amendment which would ensure that the acquisition of any assets by a state-owned enterprise would be subject to review under the National Security Review process. It guarantees that not only new business establishments, acquisitions, and share purchases are considered under the review, but all assets are included in this process. Another very good amendment to this bill. Third, when the government introduced this bill, it failed to address concerns regarding companies that have previously been convicted of corruption charges. This one makes no sense to me at all. Our Conservative amendment now, fortunately, requires that an automatic national security review is conducted whenever a company with a past conviction is involved. And finally, the government would have been happy to pass a bill that gives more authority and discretion to their minister, despite multiple blunders over the past 8 years, to take seriously the real threats posed by some foreign investments. The original bill would have left it to the minister to decide whether to trigger a national security review when the threshold was met. Our amendment addresses this oversight and makes a review mandatory rather than optional when the $1.9 billion threshold is met. Madam Speaker, I don't understand why the government would not automatically have included this in the bill. It concerns me that so many pieces of legislation coming through this government are giving more and more authority to individual ministers and not to those beyond them, to make sure that within Cabinet and certainly with the oversight of this whole House, that those things truly are transparent and sober thought has been applied. These amendments are crucial elements, the 4 that I've mentioned, to strengthening this bill. But the Liberal NDP government also denied Canadians further protections by rejecting some other key improvements that we really do feel should have been there. Witnesses at the committee stressed that many Chinese enterprises operating internationally are indentured to requests from the CCP, even if they're privately owned. That almost seems like an oxymoron, doesn't it? Instead of taking sensitive transactions seriously, the Liberals and the NDP rejected our amendment to modify the definition of a state-owned enterprise to include companies headquartered in an authoritarian state such as China. In addition, the Coalition chose not to provide exemptions to Five Eye Intelligence state-owned enterprises. Conservatives proposed an exemption to prevent an overly broad review process, which they rejected. Rather than focusing on real and serious threats to safety, the government would rather utilize its time and resources on scrutinizing our most trusted security partners. This makes no sense, Madam Speaker. Clearly, this government has struggled to get things done in a timely manner, and this would have been an opportunity for them to be far more efficient and also show an improving relationship with our Five Eyes partners and allies. Lastly, rather than supporting our amendment to create a list of sectors considered strategic to national security, the Liberal and the NDP chose to leave the process up to regulation and put it at risk of becoming a political exercise, which Canadians are very concerned about when it comes to this government, where stakeholders may invoke national security concerns to protect their own economic interests. Clearly, this government has failed over and over again to show that it is truly operating in the best interests of Canadians. I'm glad to say that our amendments that we were able to pass turned a minor process bill into a major shift in our nation's approach to foreign takeovers of Canadian companies, but there's still more that could be done to improve it. As it's currently written, the bill gives the Ministry of Industry and Public Safety near sole authority to bypass Cabinet and approve projects coming into Canada. Given past precedent, Conservatives have been sounding the alarm for years on why this will be a critical mistake. I'm reminded of when the minister neglected to conduct a full national security review of part China-owned Hytera Communications purchase of BC Norstat International in 2017. 21 counts of espionage later, the United States Federal Communications Commission blacklisted Hytera in 2021 due to, I quote, an unacceptable risk to the national security of the United States. But it wasn't until 2022 that the minister was left scrambling when the RCMP suspended its contract with Norstat for radio frequency equipment. Shockingly, Public Service and Procurement Canada confirmed that security concerns were not taken into consideration during the bidding process for the equipment. This, of course, raises alarms. The Liberals also failed to consult Canada's own communications security establishment on the contract. Instead, the contract was merely awarded to the lowest bidder, which also is interesting because quite often it seems we're hearing of funds being shared by this government with organizations that simply don't do anything for Canadians with the money that they're given. Why was this allowed to happen? Why was a piece of technology that was meant to ensure secure communication within Canada's National Police Force contracted out to a company accused of compromising national security around the world, as well as serving as a major supplier to China's public security ministry? Let's go back to 2020 when the government was prepared to award Nuktek with a $6.8 million deal to provide Canada's embassies and consulates with X-ray equipment. Now, Nuktek is again Chinese-based and founded by the son of a former Secretary General of the CCP. Deloitte Canada reviewed the offer and made a staggering recommendation to the government that it should only install security equipment in Canadian embassies if it originates from companies with national security clearance. Deloitte found that their hardware and software had advanced beyond the government's existing security requirements to the point that their X-ray machines are actually capable of gathering information and accessing information networks. Again, huge alarm bells. Global Affairs Canada did not review Nuktek for risks to national security during its procurement process, nor was the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity asked to conduct its own review. You know, this government often says we will do better, we can do better. But these things are happening over and over and over again. All this might have been too little too late, however, as the government has awarded 4 additional CBSA contracts to Nuktek since 2017. This government's laissez-faire attitude to national security is simply beyond comprehension, Speaker. But it doesn't end there. This government also can't be trusted to safeguard the security of Canadians because they cannot even follow their own rules. In March of 2021, the minister updated guidelines for national security reviews for transactions involving state-owned enterprises and Canada's critical minerals. Less than a year later, the same minister violated his own rules by expediting the takeover of the Canadian Neolithium Corporation by Chinese state-owned Zijin Mining. Once again, this was done without a national security review. And to make matters worse, the minister defended his decision by refusing to order them to divest from Neolithium while ordering 3 other Chinese companies to divest their ownership of 3 other critical mineral firms. It's just confusing to me, Madam Speaker, that they would be so inconsistent, I guess is the word I would use. Speaker, the hypocrisy is astounding. The government is once again picking winners and losers, and it's disconcerting who they are choosing to be winners. But this time, national security, too, is on the table. This cannot be allowed to continue. We have seen a pattern of missteps by this government on how programs and projects are approved. Over the last 8 years, there's been an unacceptable shift towards putting more power within the hands of ministers and outside advisory councils, with little or no accountability to this place. We certainly see that, and Canadians see it too. There is less and less of a sense of responsibility in this place to Canadians. It's as though the government can simply go ahead and provide its ministers with legislation that gives them carte blanche ability to do things, along with organizations and advisory councils that are outside of this place and do not have the proper oversight that this place, this House of Commons that reflects Canadians, certainly should have. Often, we find that appointed advisory councils are established at the minister's discretion, prior to a bill even being signed into law. That just shows the incredible lack of respect of this government to due process in this place. Other times, we see that the Liberals just can't seem to pick a lane. With C-27, for instance, the Privacy Commissioner's new powers to investigate contraventions of the Consumer Privacy Protection Act were diminished by a Personal Information and Data Tribunal. In this tribunal, only 3 of its 6 members were required to have experience in information and privacy law. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for making note of that. I appreciate it from you both. In effect, the tribunal was equipped with power equivalent to a superior court of record, which could overrule any opinion of the Privacy Commissioner. With today's bill, we see the government choosing the path of consolidated power in the hands of 2 ministers. We will continue to push for the deletion of Clause 15 to ensure that cabinet decisions making is central to the investment review process and not a ministerial power grab. Perhaps we are looking for assistance from the Senate on that. Cabinet decision making is at the heart of executive power of our system of government. We want to ensure that no single minister can make the same mistakes that we have seen repeated here time and time again. Canadians are depending on us to push for these things to take place. They are sensing less and less of an influence and a control as the democratic individuals in this country who vote for the people who sit in this place, including ministers. And so it's really important that we can continue to push this government to include the whole process, especially including as well that cabinet intervention. The Liberals missed their chance to broaden the scope of C-34 so that it would be applicable to changing geopolitical realities. It was a chance to ensure that Canadians and Canadian interests have a dominant say in what gets built in our country, gets purchased in our country, and how our resources are managed. And above all, to ensure that they are protected from complex and risky foreign interests. I know even in my own province of Saskatchewan, there's a great deal of concern about the movement into our country, even in regard to purchasing of our land. If there's one thing that Canadians are very concerned about, well, they're concerned about all of it, but that our land belongs to Canadians and that it isn't taken over, our agricultural industry and others, by foreign entities. As I asked of this government earlier in the debate on this bill, why should Canadians allow this minister to strip away any sense of accountability to Cabinet or this House and empower himself in such a way? it isn't in the best interest of Canadians. It's not actually in the best interest of any minister who is actually concerned about ensuring that they are doing what is absolutely best for Canadians by limiting it to their own office and to the bureaucracy, rather than taking into account the voices across this House and within their own cabinet that represent Canadians. Madam Speaker, when we form government, Canadians will breathe a sigh of relief on so many levels, and they can rest assured that we will always take a thorough look at the long-term implications of foreign investment, about how they will affect our constituents, our economy in the long term, and our reputation as a safe and reliable destination for international investment and for the investment of Canadians. I do want to thank the Speaker and this House for the opportunity to share the speech today. As I have a couple of minutes left, serving on the Standing Committee for Veterans Affairs, I just want to take advantage of this opportunity to speak on behalf of my communities and my constituents, and indeed as a member of that Standing Committee, all Canadians, opportunity to say thank you to our veterans and to our serving members, as well as our reservists who are potentially facing deployment in the near future. Everyone who serves this country and goes and is deployed or working within the system of national defense deserve our greatest respect, our greatest support, and please, I encourage everyone to make sure you go out to that Remembrance Day service. I know many have taken place this week. Unfortunately, being here, I've not been able to participate at home, but we need to make sure that in the large numbers that should be there, we come out and support our veterans. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.